right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Time to talk some Auburn football, and joining us on the show, former Auburn quarterback Jason Campbell, now a member of the Auburn Network and the color analyst for the Tigers. And Jason, great to have you with us. I know you don't have a lot of time right now because you've got a new addition there. Congratulations on expanding the family.
Yeah, I got a little girl. What a joy. My wife and we're honored and so thankful and blessed to have her. I tell you what, though, she's quite the character. Like she lets you know when she's hungry,
Yeah.
and then she doesn't like a dirty diaper on her, so she gonna let you know that. And then she likes to sleep, so don't interrupt those three things, and you'll be all right.
She takes after her dad, huh?
Yeah, there you go. She takes the food after her dad. She takes the sleeping. I guess that's from her mom, but babies sleep anyways. But as far as dirty diaper, whoo, now that one there, I wasn't expecting how many dirty diapers you go through in a day,
Yeah.
and the smell of those dirty diapers. I like, man, that coming up out of that little person. Yeah, that's some smells. I don't. It's nothing rosy.
Definitely an experience. I remember that quite well. But
Yeah.
spring football coming up starting next Tuesday. So I wanted to have you on and talk a little bit about that. Before we get to spring, I wanted to get your take on the two new additions in the coaching staff that we had this week. I think Kenyatta Watson as Auburn's director of recruiting, research, and strategy, and Maurice Harris as director of football and recruiting relations. So the staff and the positions continue to grow. Recruiting is getting to be a complex business.
Yeah, it's almost like the NFL, right? You got to get GMs now. You got to get someone that's over recruiting. You got to have NIL representation. Um, so it's almost like the minor leagues of the NFL, where guys got to go out and they got to judge talent. You got to because you have to now. These guys are getting paid in college. It's a business. So to make sure that these guys are getting quality players, you got to have someone that can put an eye on these players on a daily basis because the coaches just don't have the time, between trying to, implement your offense, defense, and what you want to do from a position group. That takes a lot of time, and then having to recruit your own players now. I think it's safe to say that your coaches that are on staff, most of their attention needs to come to trying to recruit their own players while you have another set of eyes that's out there watching the high school guys, so that when they come and have a meeting, then now they can watch together, and then they can go out and not have any time wasted, just from that standpoint of it. So, yeah, it's a different world out there. It's a different game, and Auburn's had a lot of changeover this off season, and everything. So, we'll see how things move forward.
Yeah, speaking of the changeover, we talked just a second ago about Cadillac. You got your Raiders cap on. He's going to the Raiders to be the running backs coach, and you spent some time with the Raiders, not in Las Vegas, but
Yeah.
what do you? He's obviously a close friend of yours. What do you think of Cadillac moving out there?
Yeah, Lat, welcome to the Raider family. Once a Raider, always a Raider. I think he's going to enjoy it at the NFL level. The one thing about it, he gets to go to Vegas. I had him when we was in Oakland.
Yeah,
The real Raiders. Down there in Vegas and everything, they get to live under the city, live under the bright lights and and everything. So I can imagine the people that be trying to come out and visit him and his family, just to have a reason now to go to Vegas. That people that haven't been to Vegas or don't know much about it, but got it on their bucket list. I'm pretty sure he'll be filling in a lot of calls. But I think it's for him, under Antonio Pierce, who's another former NFL player as a head coach. I think he has 7 former NFL players on his coaching staff. So I think going there with a lot of familiarity with a lot of those guys, I think helps this transition a lot faster.
hmm Let's talk about spring football a little bit. We got a couple days before we get underway, but just your general take, Jason, I guess, as to what you're expecting. What kind of battles do you see out there? A lot of talk, of course, about the receiving core coming in. We got a couple of those guys on campus, I think. And of course, everybody wants to talk about the quarterbacks, which you're an expert at. Do you think we'll see a big battle at quarterback, or is that kind of getting overhyped a little bit?
No, I think you will see a battle. The reason I say that is I think Peyton Thorne had an opportunity in the bowl game to come out and kind of, put that to rest a little bit, but he didn't, and I think with that being said, it kind of left the door open for an open competition. And it has to be a real open competition. Just because of the simple fact that you don't have to be afraid no more, Doug, to play young quarterbacks because these kids, they start at seventh grade, all these 7-on-7 camps. They play travel ball. A lot of high school coaches, you think about Red Lashley, Gus Malzahn, Coach Freeze, a lot of guys that was at the high school level are now in college. So they're running a lot of those offenses now. So when they go do these seminars, a lot of high school coaches are running what the college guys are running. And so now you're seeing that transition move from college to the NFL. So they've learned to get better product is have an understanding. And these kids nowadays, they have an understanding when they step foot on campus of a lot of these offenses. And you saw that last year. Hank Brown didn't touch the field the entire year. And when he got into the game in the bowl game, you just saw the ball spinning off his hand just differently. And to me, there was no indecision. There was no um, you know, happy feet in the pocket. The kid just came out like he was in command. The ball was just coming off his hand. He was going through his progression, just cutting it loose. To me, that's a kid that understands, the offense and understands the game, but wasn't flustered about anything. Now, of course, it was certain different circumstances later in the game, but still out as a quarterback, those are the things that you watch. How the ball come off, how's the quick decisions, those type of things. And I think Hank put himself in the opportunity to say, hey guys, don't forget about me over here. And he's typically was a red shirt last year, so
Yeah.
he will have a chance to compete as a red shirt freshman. And then you got Walker White, who everyone has a lot of high praise for coming out of high school. It had a really good all-star game, and he's the guy that I've seen him in person. He looks like a SEC quarterback. And so you have some young, talented quarterbacks that's coming in with one of the best receiving classes of all time in Auburn history. Yeah. And, you're going to have Cam Coleman and Bryce Kane and, some of the transfer guys that came in at their receiving core. So you immediately have up your receiver room and everything. But I think what comes in handy, and Enrico Walker, another tight end, is coming in to play along with Fairweather, that's athletic as well. I think what happens now is if you're Peyton Thorne, if you want to win this job, you have to show command early. You got to get these guys rolling early. You gotta show that senior leadership, but you gotta have patience. And what I mean, if you're gonna have the Cam Coleman's and the Perry Thompson that'll be here in the summer, Perry Thompson, but Cam is here now, him and Bryce, those guys are gonna make some outstanding plays, but they're also gonna require some patience,
Yeah.
because until they get their feet wet and get used to doing things. So it's a way that he has to be able to communicate with those guys to get them to believe in him as their quarterback. So, he still can win the job, but he's got to show more command and more leadership in dealing with his teammates. If he's going to be the guy, I think the most important thing for this football team is what are we going to do in the trenches? You lose Coach Garrett to Jacksonville. You move up Coach Von Trail, who's kind of been an understudy of Coach Garrett. So he kind of knows the ins and outs. You have a young defensive line, but then you still have some veteran guys. You go out, you get Gage Keys from Kansas, who's expected to be one of the stars. You get Trill Carter from University of Texas, but then you got Jason Jones who's still there. Jason, this is a big year for Jason. You lose Justin Rogers, you lose Marcus Harris. So these guys got to step up. You still get Keldrick Faulk and McLeod. So you got talent at the defensive line that I think can create pressure on the quarterbacks, which we didn't get a lot of last year. But I think this group can create pressure. But then the offensive line, to me, would Dylan Wade be one of the premier left tackles in the SEC this year? You lose Gunnar Britton, who's probably one of the better guards. Will Jaden Muskrat fill that role? Or will Tall Miller, who's out at right tackle, will he stay at right tackle? Will he move inside? And then Connor Lew at the center position. So you have a lot of talent, Doug. I think that we've had in the last couple of years. Now just about getting this team to gel together and getting that chemistry.
Yeah. And with the talent we have through recruiting and the portal, we talked a little bit about the interesting season in the SEC that's coming up without divisions. But with the guys we have, do you feel like we're ready to compete at the highest level? Obviously, we showed that a little bit last year, but how far along do you think we are?
Well, it all comes down to who's who's going to be the quarterback. You
Yeah.
know, how far can your quarterback take you? When the pressure's on and pressure moments in the games. Uh, the best thing we have going, we have a strong run game. You know, you still got Jerquez, you still got Austin, you still got Jeremiah Cobb, and those guys. You know, you still have coming back. And if you can run the football really well, that takes a lot of pressure off your quarterbacks. And defensive, you look at the defensive backs. You picked up guys in the portal, but most importantly, you still got Kyan Lee, and then you got Keontae Scott that you now can move from inside to outside. But then you got some young guys like the Tyler Scotts and those guys that redshirted last year, Sylvester Smith, and those guys that now have a chance to step up, as well as some of the veteran guys they was able to bring in. So the roster is the roster is shaped up to where you got speed, and speed is the name of the game now. It's not so much as big and strong, but speed. And how fast would our linebacker play? We get the linebacker from Duke. I think it's going to be a huge addition with Austin Keys and Eugene Asante and Reddit, the high school star guy that came out. So you have guys that can run, Doug. You have guys that know the game. We lost a lot of games last year, and we was right there, Georgia game, Bama game, but then you scratch your head when you lose games like New Mexico State, uh, Maryland, those type of teams that shouldn't be on the field with us. When you lose those type of games, you don't really know how far the gap is, because when you watch the Georgia and Bama game, you're like, okay, we're closing the gap. But then you go and lose the games like that, and you're like, okay, maybe we're not closing the gap. So
Yeah.
I think I do think we are closing the gap just based off of recruiting. Last year we
Yeah.
finished top 12. This year we finished top 10, and so I think that alone, I think tells us we are actually closing the gap a little bit.
Yeah, hard to know which tape to watch sometimes with the
Yeah,
Auburn Tigers
yeah,
last year. But
yeah.
you mentioned the defense a little bit. I know we had a couple of guys down here at the Senior Bowl, Nehemiah Pritchett and DJ James at the corner. Um, is that going to be an important spot for Auburn to find those solid players there in the spring that can step into those shoes?
Yeah, you got guys, and that's the key. Like you look at a Colton Hood, who's his uncle is Rod Hood. If anyone remember played here at Auburn back in our days.
Yeah,
But then you got, like I said, you have Kyan Lee, who was a highly touted guy coming out of high school, and he started the first 3 games last year because Nehemiah was hurt, and he showed a lot of promise. And I'm pretty sure he's locking up one of those corner positions. Like I said, Keontae moving from inside to outside helps. But then the transfer, I think, from Toledo, I think we got, who's supposed to be really good at corner. You got him. Then you get the transfer from Bama, who transferred over as well in the secondary.
yeah.
So then you ask yourself, where's JD Rim? Will JD Rim be a guy that can step up and help this team this year? Because there are going to be some young guys like we talked about, Colton Hood and those guys. Will JD Rim be someone that can step up? Who fills Simpson's position? That's the big question mark. Like, Kaufman has hit the transfer portal. So you know who fills that position? Who's going to be the guy back there that becomes the ball hog on defense when the ball is in the air in that secondary? And so we'll see.
Speaking with Jason Campbell, former Auburn quarterback, about Auburn spring practice coming up next week. And Jason, I wanted to get back for a minute to the quarterback situation. You didn't mention Holden Garner, who's also one
Yeah.
of the guys we have. Do you think he's number 4 going into the spring? And I know probably with 4 quarterbacks, we're going to have somebody maybe see the portal after spring practice, don't you think?
Yeah, you kind of expect that, right? I think if you see anybody hit the portal in May, it would probably be Holden. I think Holden's probably saying, "Hey, look, I'm going to give this thing a spring to see what happens," because he got in the bowl game, but you stand on the sideline for a long time, and I know Hank came in and did well, and Holden, kind of didn't look that good, in the bowl game,
Yeah.
and everything. But I'm pretty sure him having a full off season, he has a big arm and everything. It's either make it, break it spring for him. Either he's gonna make some value this spring and say, "Hey, I got a real shot at this thing," or he's gonna say, "You know what? I gave it a shot. I tried it. It's not happening for me. I'm gonna move on. I think he's the one person that is a make it or break it spring because Thorne's a senior, so this is all he has. The other two guys are young pups, so it's no rush, but they also want to play. But Holden is the guy that got to make a real decision, like because now he's going to his third year. Is this going to be my real opportunity? Is this it for me, or is it elsewhere? So I think he's the domino. I think out of all the quarterbacks, that if someone need to have a make or break it spring, is him.
Yeah. And the other guy that pops in my head is Peyton. If he's not the starter coming out of spring, I would think he's got to be thinking along those lines too, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I would think he would think along those lines, but as a senior though, I don't think he has enough time to leave.
Yeah.
This is kind of what got him in a situation last year when he came from Michigan State. He wasn't able to come over in the springtime and he missed all the spring ball.
Right.
And then all of a sudden summer comes and he's hard pressed trying to learn everything as quick as he can and then trying to go through training camp and all of a sudden the season is amongst you and he's the starter and everything. Where this year is different for him. I do expect to see a different Peyton, only because now he has an opportunity to go through a full spring. He's not rushing. He has a chance to sit back, observe, learn, and then go back and watch the film, not on what he did at Michigan State, but what he did at Auburn last year, and be able to improve off of that. And then having a second year where Coach Freeze will be the play caller this year. It won't be back and forth where, hey, is Coach Montgomery calling the plays or Coach Freeze calling the plays? We all know Coach Freeze is going to call the plays.
Hmm.
So now these guys get a chance to build a rapport with each other. So it's going to come down. I think it's his to lose at this point because he has a senior leadership, but he has to show something though physically and decision making the ball coming off his hands during the spring if he wants to hold off Walker White and hold off Hank Brown. I think a lot of people are super excited about that kid. He's got to do something to hold him off because Coach Reeves, he probably won't have as much patience with him if he did as he did last year,
Hmm.
because he knew he came in late. He knew it was going to be some growing pains. So we'll see what happens.
You think Walker is in a position as a true freshman, or actually as a should be a high school senior, to come in and win the job?
Well, you've seen it at other places.
Yeah.
You've seen guys come in and win. And everybody like, oh man, that kid's young, and all of a sudden, he plays and does well.
Yeah.
Auburn's not afraid to play young quarterbacks. I played as a redshirt freshman. Bo Nix started as a true freshman. So they started guys early on before. It's been a long time since Auburn's had a 3-4 year starter though. Here at the program. So we'll see what happens. But if you're Walker, like you got to feel like I have just as much opportunity as the rest of them. But like he's in a win situation because if he doesn't win the job,
Got time.
yeah, he got time. You can
Yeah.
take a red shirt, take a red shirt, sit back, learn, develop, get stronger, and don't lose a year.
Mm.
Where the other guys is they don't have a red shirt year.
Yep. And you mentioned Coach Freeze calling the plays and Kent Austin stepping in at quarterback coach this spring and next season.
Mhm.
What you mentioned the play calling. Do you think it's totally Hugh Freeze, or will Kent Austin have a big role in that during the ball game, or just during the week?
I think Austin has a lot to do during the week. I think as a play caller, you have to get into a rhythm and a flow of the game. You have to know why you're calling certain plays on first and second down early in the first quarter and the second quarter because you're trying to set up something for the third and fourth quarter. And you want to get a certain look and see how the defense is reacting to those situations. And in order to do that, you have to be in the flow of the game as a play caller. That's one reason why he got the job. Is because of his play calling. He's at Ole Miss play calling. When he goes to Liberty, play calling. And I think you have to get back to doing what got you the job. You have to start getting back to what made you be successful in the first place. And I think, him hiring Derek Nitz coming over from Ole Miss, who was with him at Ole Miss, I think he put some familiar guys around him because the simple fact of he's not going to always have the time to be in the room with these offensive guys. But Derek Nitz knows what he's looking for in his offense, where he can communicate with the guys. Austin is another guy he knows that can communicate with the quarterbacks, communicate with the offense as well. So then when he steps into the room, it's not like we got to start over. He can just go right off where they stopped at.
Right.
because they have an understanding of the offense. So I expect the offense to flow a lot better this year, especially with the new additions we got outside. But I do expect it to flow better just because he's calling the plays.
We touched on the schedule and the new formatting next year for the SEC. Finally, I want to get your take on that. No East and West, which is going to be different for people. It's going to be a real struggle, I guess, to see who gets to the championship game next year and see who finishes first and second.
Yeah, you're right. It's no East or West. It's gonna be weird. No CBS. We actually go to ABC, ESPN this year, so no CBS.
Maybe some
Um,
Disney Plus, huh?
right, right. So it's just everything's new this year, and
Yeah.
then you think about it as a whole. I think they take the top 2 records at the end of the year, goes to Atlanta and plays for the SEC championship. Right now, I think there's 3 games on the schedule that are non-conference. I think they're probably gonna shoot moving forward to taking one of those non-conference games off and move towards the format of only having 2 non-conference games and the rest of them conference. Um, but when you think about no East or West, like it's anybody's league this year. There's a lot of really good teams that's coming into here. You got Texas and Oklahoma, and then you have, Ole Miss is kind of taking a step up a little bit, even though they lost their running back. Alabama is a lot of question marks. What did Bama do now that Nick Saban's retired? Georgia seems to be the big dog now. Kirby's building a brand over there, and can someone knock off the dogs? And so Missouri is that sneaker team that had a really good season last year and has a lot of talent coming back and did really good in recruiting and in the portal this year. They're going to be a team to contend with. For Auburn, we have to go to Missouri. We got to go to Lexington, in Kentucky. Two road games that are not easy. Not easy. And then you got to go to Bama, and then we have to go to Georgia. So our road test next year is it's going to be a challenge. As a whole. But when you talk about there's no LSU on the schedule, which is weird. LSU has always been a huge rival game since the early 1990s. There's always something fluke happens in that game. There's always something that keeps you on your edge. And to not be playing that rival game, I don't know whether Auburn likes it or don't like it. I know from a fan perspective, you hate to lose that game. It's always been one of the fun ones you look forward to on the schedule. No Mississippi schools this year. We don't play Mississippi State or Ole Miss. You know, that's going to be weird. That's we've been playing each other for years, so not to have those 2 teams on the schedule is it's another one. So I think the league is in a really good spot. You look at it as a whole, Doug. Florida, how much pressure this year is on Florida to have to do something?
A lot.
They still, yeah, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot. Everyone's still trying to figure out the conferences this year. Pac-12 has 2 teams right now,
Yeah.
and if you look at the playoff format, they're talking about taking the 5 champions or something like that, and then 7 the next 7, or whatever, how that's supposed to be.
Extras. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I expect it to be a fun year because you now get on campus playoff football. Like, that's gonna be fun. You
Yeah.
imagine Auburn at Jordan Hare playing a, playoff game in early January in early December, it's gonna be wow. Wow, we never had that before. So it's just something that's gonna make a lot of people tune in to college football a lot more. You don't have the scenario this year where a Florida State team gets left out. Whether it was right or wrong, you won't have to answer that anymore. You get a chance to battle it out. So I kind of like the format. Thought it should have been 8 instead of 12, but 12 is better than 4.
Yeah. I kind of thought eight as well, but
Yeah.
we'll have the 12-team playoff, and we'll have no East and West, and certainly an opportunity for Auburn to make some progress. I always equate it to, when Coach Bryant left Alabama and Coach Dye came in. It seems like that kind of opportunity for Hugh Freeze next year, the year after, to do something at Auburn. But Jason, always appreciate you being with us and taking time. I know you got duties elsewhere, so it's back to changing those diapers, right?
Yeah, yeah, she's probably waiting on me right now. So my wife's cooking right now, so I told her I need to sneak out a little bit and go take care of my man Doug, do a Zoom with him, and then come back in and eat. As soon as I eat, you already know it's back to daddy night shift. So, give my wife time to rest. But I wouldn't trade it. I know I've given football everything. I've given, family and everything. And to now for my wife and I to have our first child, it's a true honor. It's a true blessing, especially the road it took to get there. We don't take it for granted. So, it's definitely a great joy. And I take great pride in being a dad.
Absolutely. Congratulations again, and good luck. We'll see you soon, and looking forward to spring practice, War Eagle.
Yep. War Eagle. Appreciate it.